Everyone says that if you want to become a software developer, you need to build your own project. You need to write tons of code, tons of bad code that will become better and better with your practice. But right now, with all my experience, I can tell you that the theory is no less important than the practice. After building a couple of projects, I easily got into a situation when I understood only something that I had worked on before, and that happened because of a simple lack of the theoretical knowledge. Every time you need to think wider, you'll realize that you don't have enough knowledge, and this happens even with pretty experienced developers. That's why I think that learning computer science as early as possible is a pretty good advice. Also, I want to advise to dive a little bit deeper to the documentation to understand how the things work in the background. You can also visit different conferences, summits and lectures. It adds a pretty big value too. My name is Boris, I'm a software engineer from Tel Aviv, and let's move on with the things I wish I knew when I started programming. Despite that I've just said that it's very important to learn, you need to understand that it's okay to have a lack of knowledge. It's okay to Google things, to learn something on the way, and even to ask other developers for help. But you should stop thinking that everyone's around you clever than you or write better codes, because the imposter syndrome will hit you heavily. The imposter syndrome makes you feel that everyone around you is much better than you know nothing, and everything that you achieved is just because of some stupid luck. I'll give you a few examples. Once I was discussing an architecture of a mobile app with two other developers, and they used the names of some design patterns that I had never heard about before. So, you know, that was not the best feeling. And after our conversation, I googled that design patterns and I realized that I had used them before, I just didn't know their names. And here's another example. Once I had an interview for the position of a Java developer that was many years ago, and they showed me the code and I had to tell them what that code actually does. And to be honest, despite that I had some Java experience, I couldn't understand what exactly was going on that piece of paper when I was looking at that code. So I failed the interview. Then when I came back home, I googled that code, I understood what that code was doing, and after that I changed a couple of more jobs and I had dozens of interviews, and I haven't ever met that piece of code in any project again. Go to the job interviews, even if you think that you are not good enough yet to get this job. First of all, it gives you a better understanding of who the companies are looking for right now. If you don't pass even the first round of a tech interview, it will still give you a pretty big value, because you will understand where you can be in a couple of months, or maybe in a couple of years, and you can set your goals properly. And I'm not even talking that going to the job interviews helps you to develop your self-confidence and communicational skills. The biggest delusion that I see nowadays when I talk to someone who wants to become a software developer is that programming is about the code. No, programming is about the people. It's not a big deal to explain to the computers what to do, actually to write the code, but it's harder to understand what the program should do from the people that you are writing this program for. That's why a good software engineer, not just a coder, a real developer, a real engineer, knows how to deal with tech spec, with high-level design, and is able to find the contradictions in the spec, to define the edge cases, and to understand what the main challenges are. You will communicate to a lot of different people, program managers, team leaders, other developers, and you need to know what questions to ask, how to explain a complex and abstract thing, and also how to present your job when it's done. For example, when I started programming, I didn't expect that there would be the days in the office when I would jump from one meeting to another without writing a single line of code. It sounds pretty obvious, but you need to have a mate or two to discuss different technologies, frameworks, rumors, job interviews, or even latest news in your local tech scene. Being a software developer is a kind of a lifestyle. For example, I can't stop thinking of all these things when I close in my MacBook when the job is done. That's the thing I love, and it sounds pretty natural for me to have the friends with the same interests. Also, you can go with your friends to different tech meetups or conferences together. And sometimes I feel that I get the most interesting and the most important and valuable information from my friends, and not only from the articles I read or the YouTube videos I watch. I thought to read you the explanation of what Dunning-Kruger effect is from Wikipedia, but after that I decided maybe to explain with my own simple words. Imagine you are just starting to work with some new technology and you already know some stuff and you succeed to do some simple tasks. At this point, your self-confidence is skyrocketing. This is the most dangerous place, and at this point it's better to participate less in the discussions around this technology or not insist on your point of view. Then at some point you realize that there is a knowledge gap, and then you start understanding how big this knowledge gap is. You think that you know nothing about this technology, and at this point you feel depressed and your self-confidence is totally destroyed. After the months of even years of using this technology, you see that your knowledge gaps are getting smaller and smaller, and you can solve different problems by using this technology more effectively than before. So I wish I knew when I started programming the transition between these different stages could be really challenging and even painful. There is no perfect code, and you should understand it. Once I read an article about a research that was done inside one big enterprise company on the amount of the bugs an average programmer writes while developing a feature. The results say that an average developer makes one mistake for every 100 lines of code. Most of that bugs are caught during the code review, some of them during the testing, but there are also a small amount of them that still make it to production. Of course, every developer should do his best to minimize the amount of mistakes he does, write better tests, but most of the bugs on the production made it there because of the edge cases, and sometimes even if you have a really good imagination, you can't predict how a user can abuse the system. I'm not even talking about the different legacy code we reuse or the code inside the frameworks that are already integrated into the system. And I should say it's not the best feeling when someone comes to you and says there is a bug, but you should live with it. You should understand that it's okay to make mistakes. But of course, as I have already said, you should try your best to write as good code as possible. If I have already started talking about the best code, I should say that the best code is that code that is not written yet. If you look back to the research that I have mentioned above, you should understand that every new code means new bugs. So the best way is to provide a solution when no code changes should be done. Or if you need to change the code, try to think about the solution that can minimize the code changes that should be done. Try to think how you can solve the problem and touch less areas inside the system as possible. That's why it's important to understand that if you develop a new feature, if you write a new code, try to make it as simple as possible. So when you need to make the changes in the future, it will be less painful for you or other developers. This one is really important. If you are asked to make some changes, just do what you were told. Don't overthink the problem. Don't do something because you think it will be better. Sometimes you probably are not aware of the reason why it was done like that before in the system, and if you change it, probably you will break something. Or sometimes this thing that you would like to change on the way can take much more time than you expected. expected. But if you still think that it's better to change it despite that you are not told to change it, I would suggest you to consult with your team leader, with other teammates, with your product manager, and to explain them pretty clear why you think that your change should be done now and not later. I wish I would become a software developer earlier, as it's a wonderful and well-paid job where you need to solve really interesting and complex problems. You meet a lot of amazing and talented people, so if you're adapting right now, if you should challenge yourself or probably start to learn later, my advice is to start learning right now. No need to wait, and I hope my channel will help you with that.